great vino. And again, sorry that the tasting got so large, but that's one of the reasons. So, okay, well, whether it's not comes around, we have two wines, and they're Vino Nobiles. I wanted to highlight them both. Really, I wanted to highlight them because if any store manager actually chooses to watch this long rendering video, I wanted to include Montalcino into our Tuscan exploration. So forget about Montepulciano, excuse me, not Montalcino. So forget about Montalcino, the Brunello area, and go a little bit further this way, and you reach a town called Montepulciano. Montepulciano was actually the vocation home of the popes back in the day. So the wines got known as Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. Most producers there will tell you that there's a specific strain of Sangiovese that's made there, which is Sangiovese Gentile or Prognolo de Gentile there. Whether you believe that or not will be up to you in terms of tasting it, but Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. Of course, we can't get confused with the other grape variety of Montepulciano, because there is a grape variety called Montepulciano. So we have a town that we're tasting from, which is Montepulciano, and we're tasting that town today, and we're tasting their wines known as Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. And then there's a grape variety called Montepulciano, which we're not tasting today, which is on the Adriatic coast. So I wanted to taste, just to make it, I figured that's, like a cat looks as clear as I did at 8:30.
I'm ready for the quiz.
Yeah, the mental focus is, we're charged. Right. Yes, So I wanted to show you guys these two producers from Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, because these are the ones that we've actually hung on to and sold the most of over the years. And that would be Poliziano and then Boscarelli. Thank you. Yeah. So with these two, let's focus on Boscarelli first, because I think it's a little bit more elegant version of Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. Now, I would say that these are not the cheapest versions of Vino Nobile that you could ever have on the shelf, but again, they're the ones that I think are important. So if you see less expensive Vino Nobiles, hopefully they're in some ways close to what you're tasting here, but recommend these first, please. Now, Boscarelli has a place in my heart because it has an interesting story to it, and it relates back to the fact that, if you remember, we actually started this tasting as a Tuscan tasting based in Chianti. We haven't been back to Chianti for an hour and a half, so that's okay. We had pizza in the meantime, we'll get there. Now, when we left Chianti, we were talking about Super Tuscans and how Super Tuscans were changing things in Chianti in the 60s and early 70s, and then how they blew up in the 80s and 90s. Now, we also talked about sharecropping, the change in Chianti, the loss of workers in Chianti, and what that meant to Chianti. Now, the amazing thing is the 9 outside regions of Chianti, and then also in Brunello somewhat, but also very strongly in Vino Nobile, that loss of workers, the migration to the cities, the ending of sharecropping in the 1960s, really meant an end to the region as a production zone. So one of the amazing things to think about Vino Nobile di Montepulciano is it's called that because it's where the popes drank wine and they have their summer homes. But by 1971, there were no operating producers in Vino Nobile. It was essentially extinct as a wine growing region. So it did not exist anymore as a wine growing region because of those economic factors that we talked about in Chianti. Now, there are producers that brought it back, and one of those major producers that brought it back was actually the Boscarelli family. I do like this story a lot. Husband and wife come back. They start working a winery in 1972. They start making Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. He's considered one of the great producers of Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. It's his life work. It's an amazing life work. They do it as a family. She has 2 sons, and in 1978, he passes away early. She's left with the winery and the sons, and they all agree to take it on as a family proposition. And it is essentially the rebirth of Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. So I know that Boscarelli is not the most cheapest Vino Nobile that you could ever sell, but I love the story, and I think the wine holds up to the story. Meaning that here Vino Nobile to me always has a little bit more black fruit, a little bit more graphite, a little bit of graphite in the sense of like Bordeaux has graphite when it's planted in stone soil, so a little bit more of that character to it. Doesn't have as punchy acid, so a little bit more roundness to it, and a little bit more weight on the back end with tannin structure when it's done well. Shows a little bit more elegance than your basic Chianti, but I think Boscarelli does that really well. So a little side trip, and again, it's mostly meant for you guys if you need to recommend Vino Nobile, and then also when we present this one, I'd like to present one of these two lines. Now, if you want to taste the difference between Boscarelli and Palazzino, again, I really wanted to taste these two side by side. Palazzino has also been a very important producer to us. The difference here is Palazzino goes for a riper and more modern and more oaky style. And I like it for that fact. You may not, but I like it because it's riper, it's more powerful, and it shows more oak. And I think it's really well done in that formation. I think it's one of the best that's really well done in that formation. I don't have the same romantic story that I have about the Boscarelli's about Palazzino, but I've also just really liked Palazzino because if someone wants a Vino Nobile de Montepulciano and they ask you for it, you know, maybe some of us have worked in an Italian restaurant or had an Italian food night, and you're like, we want a Vino Nobile de Montepulciano, and you can tell that the client wants something that, like, you know, brings the thunder. You don't open it and you're searching for why the hell Italians and popes drank this stuff. Palazzino gives that to you and gives it to you in a really wonderful way.
Think Delafield.
No, that happens. Happens everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. Trust me. Do
not disparage the cat.
Yeah. Do not disparage the Delafield. You know, like
keeps the doors open.
Yeah.
That's how you serve.
Well, and I really like it. They also, on occasion, have given us max and 3 liters, and the 3 liters are under $100. So I mean, like that's a party in a bottle, and you look like a superhero. Because you're bringing something that the Pope sanctioned to drink. Yeah. So. Okay, so it's quick. Okay, I think we're probably at noon, so let's fire on Chianti's. 12.